If you guys would like to buy coins, you can go to MMOXP.com. There will be a link in the description. They are the cheapest and safest option. You can use my code JFC at checkout for a 5% discount. Well, guys, there's been a lot of debate over the last, maybe I'd say a couple days here of whether EA reverted the whole patch that they just made or not. The best patch we talked about in a while. Was there some sort of live tuning update or what happened here? Because the game for a lot of people felt a lot worse this last weekend compared to the first weekend of that new patch, right? It's kind of been the talk of the town on social media over the last couple of days, and I kind of want to give my longer drawn out thoughts than on our main channel video that we talked about yesterday. We saw Krozzy's tweet, I think, right? And now Avi had a tweet as well talking about the same thing, and it was getting a lot of engagement, so I want to talk about that. And thank you all for being here, of course, on the second channel. I greatly appreciate you, and let's kind of dive into this whole thing here because there's a lot to break down with it. So okay, let's read Avi's tweet. EA have fooled us one more time. The game has been 100% soft patched and reverted to how it was before to a certain degree. AI defending has started to be OP again. Passing is not as bad as before, but it has 100% been nerfed comparing to how it was post-patch. Manual defending is not as important as it was after patch. You can rely again too much on AI. Servers, especially on consoles, have been horrible during Team of the Year. Pack wave for most of us have been a joke. The question that needs to be answered is, why on earth would EA do this? Why revert the patch? Too many goals being scored, too many casuals stopping, question mark. So we had Avi. We obviously saw Krozzy's as well yesterday. They also saw Fuji's, I think. Yeah, Fuji talking about how bad the game was this weekend, and it makes people believe that it's been soft patched. This guy replied and said, people adjusted to new patch. Yeah, suddenly Team of the Year Henry, who had one of the best speed boosts in the game, can't outrun Puyol. Playstyles for passing didn't even matter for a few days after patch. Now players with gold pinged and tiki-taka can't make a simple pass. AI defending OP again, etc. But it was very split 50-50. There wasn't a whole lot of consensus here. Also, there were some really interesting clips here from this guy, Perez, AFC Perez, saying, all within the last hour of gameplay. Not perfect examples, but I'm running Team of the Year Mbappe and he's getting smoked by defenders like Gehi. Last week, post-patch, he was getting past and defenders just would not catch up. So let's go and watch these clips here. I think it has Mbappe versus Gehi on all these clips here. So that one, the angle wasn't great for Mbappe, but look at how slow the rapid plus touch is. I think that's kind of what he's more talking about here. That rapid plus touch is just, that's a painful one. You take that touch, Team of the Year Mbappe, and you're like, holy shit, rapid plus my ass, right? Another one here. What happens here? Yeah, that one, like the speed boost felt nice, but then Gehi comes in and it kind of just still had the pace on him, right? Or at least a better angle. Gehi has a better angle to this ball actually than Mbappe like kind of takes here, but it's still, you would maybe expect you to get away a little bit easier maybe there. And last clip I think is off of a corner, a counterattack on a corner. Yeah, here it is right here. So he's got Gertruda, takes the ball off of him by an interception, and then he goes to Martinelli, who has rapid plus, kind of gets away there a little bit, and then Gertruda comes in and just straight up destroys him, right? Pretty much there was no even closeness to that pace battle at all. That was kind of just destruction from Gertruda there. Now keep in mind here, once again, actually he has the better angle to this. Angle's very important. Gertruda has actually the better angle to this. He's kind of cutting up slightly. Gertruda's just going to run straight. He takes a very good angle to this ball, but still the point is, I think from his point of view, you'd maybe expect that to be a little bit easier or more of a battle, right? So this is kind of the claim from the people who think that the patch has just straight up been like either completely reverted to the old or has been, you know, changed to some degree here. And I think that where I'm fully on board with this is that I do think the gameplay this weekend was, I mean, this is just my anecdotal experience. I think it was worse than last weekend. I think that for sure it was the case. So what do we kind of make of this whole claim here, right? Well, the very first thing let's talk about is maybe, you know, he talks about, the question is, why would EA do this? Why revert the patch? Are there too many casuals stopping? Now, the only way to get a good gauge on the player count right now is Steam charts. And of course, Steam charts aren't going to be the best way to go about looking at exact player counts, of course, but the trends you'll see on Steam will be similar trends that you'll see on console or other platforms out there. If you go back and look at the last 30 days peak, it actually was yesterday. I'm recording this video. It was 109,657. That is the 30-day peak. It was literally yesterday at content time, about 30 minutes after, 109,000 there at content time. So the claim that casuals may be stopped, it doesn't look like our one metric of player count viewing would maybe support that here. It just doesn't look like that would be the case, really. The average player count's up. The peak player count was the highest it's been in the last 30 days, which you would expect, right? But then we also have to think about, we literally had an EA press release where their whole spiel to their shareholders was, hey, don't freak out. We just released this patch that the fans liked. So don't sell your shares, please, and tank our stock even further than it already was tanked. So, you know, they just go back on that in a week or 2 weeks. I know that is hard for me to get my brain around. And I think that Avi here, like, this isn't even exactly wrong per se, because I think that the gameplay feeling different from weekend to weekend is 100% a thing, guys. That, like, we have an underlying issue that for some reason just we don't really think about in times like this, that I don't personally understand how we don't think about that. And that is, we have gameplay that doesn't feel the same from day to day. We have gameplay that doesn't feel the same from person to person in the exact same game. You could have one person in a game where the gameplay feels great for them, and another person in the same exact game where the gameplay feels like shit. So that to me is a much bigger culprit, or can be a much bigger culprit to all these issues than like, hey, they went back on their patch a week later that was universally loved, really, and they literally told their shareholders, hey, don't sell because the patch has been well received. So to me, we have like such a ridiculous issue that deserves to be talked about more often, that the game is so different from day to day, from person to person, that we have 10 years of a sample size for, rather than one weekend league where people think the gameplay went back to how it was before. And the claim hasn't even really been that it's fully back. It's that it's slightly back, right? To a certain degree was his tweet here. Defending's not what it was OP-wise, but kind of is. Passing's not quite as bad as it was before, but it's worse. So that makes it even more muddy, right? And like I said, I can't even blame Avi or people who think that the patch is just straight up gone, right? I can't even blame them for thinking that, because there are so many goddamn variables with so many aspects in the game that how do you make it controlled, right? You want to have a controlled experiment. How do you make it all controlled, right? Because funnily enough, it talked about acceleration types. I want to talk about that next, because just think about pace itself, right? Just that stat alone. You have so many different things to think about. Team of the year Mbappe, right? You have literally a base 99 pace player. You can't get any faster stats wise, but you have the stats, then you have play styles, right? What does he have? He has quick step and rapid plus. Okay, count that in. He's also got mostly explosive acceleration type. Okay, so we got to factor that in now. And then also the most popular chem style on Mbappe is marksman. Marksman makes him a controlled explosive. And I'm going to warn you right now, guys, controlled is ass. Controlled is terrible. If you can be on anything that isn't controlled, try that, please. I'm begging you to try that, because I'm telling you right now, it's terrible. It was terrible last year. People didn't talk about it. It's terrible again this year. Obviously, that's just my opinion, of course, but every control player I use is not as fast as an explosive or a lengthy player. So if that was true or controlled's worse, you could have a 99 pace player with quick step, rapid plus, still not as fast as he could be, which that in itself is a much bigger issue to me. It's something we can actually kind of account for, that we know exists, rather than like a patch that we think, or a live tuning update that we don't know exists happened, right? That's harder to believe than just like, yeah, we have a system in the game where there's so many variables that it shouldn't be this way. And the reason I personally think that pace hasn't really changed much is that I have an Erling Haaland card, right? Who has rapid plus, this card's the fastest card in the game. And what I did was give him a marksman as well, which also makes him mostly lengthy. He has mostly lengthy, rapid plus. I'm telling you right now, the reason I know the patch isn't fully gone is because this card here is the fastest card in the game. If you have this Haaland card and you put a marksman on him, go and try him, because there ain't no defenders catching you. I mean, maybe a team of the year Van Dijk's catching you, okay? Maybe that's happening, but he doesn't count, okay? Your standard sweaty center back, this card is not being caught by him, because he has mostly lengthy and rapid plus. I think mostly lengthy and any lengthy at all is great. I think like very explosive cards too are also great. And you got stats to count in, and you got playstyles to count in. There's just so many factors here that then we have to think about, oh yeah, inconsistent gameplay exists. The game changes on a game-to-game basis for players. So we can't even like begin almost to try and figure out what is going on here, because how could you, with the amount of time that an average person has, figure out what the hell's going on here? Which maybe, I guess, lends credence towards this theory where you'd be like, yeah, the patch maybe has changed then. Like maybe that theory has just as much credence as my theory that there's so many variables in there, which I don't think is the case, but maybe you could argue that. And we haven't even counted in the fact that people are just adapting reacting to the new patch? Are there going to be better tactics for the new patch now, right? And if there are things that are happening that have nothing to do with tactics at all, then that could be part of the inconsistent gameplay problem that we were talking about earlier. So there's just so much to think about and so much at play here that I'm stunned that a former pro FIFA player who knows obviously the gameplay feels different from game to game doesn't reach that conclusion rather than a conclusion that we just don't have any evidence for, that they reverted the patch. I shouldn't say no evidence at all, right? Because you could have evidence that could suggest something that actually isn't true. And the thing is I could be wrong about this too. I could be wrong that the patch didn't get reverted. Like, it could have. I mean, I don't have definitive proof of this. I'm just stating the fact that I think we're forgetting just how much fucking bullshit is in this game and how many variables there are that can account for a player getting caught up to, that can account for a shot missing, that can account for a pass that should have been more accurate that wasn't. There's so many things to think about that basically we ended up here because of needing to sell packs, right? We ended up with stats, then we ended up with play styles because that's important too. Then we ended up with roles now. You know, we got roles as well now out of nowhere. That is like, all this is just to sell packs, right? So we ended up with this jumbled coded mess that already was bad 9 years ago. Now we add all these things on. Yes, we have more resources, you know, better consoles, whatever you want to say. You add all of this on here, and yeah, it's not that surprising to me, and I think to most of you guys, that shit feels different game to game because they don't really know what they're doing, honestly. And maybe they shouldn't say that, but well, no, I can say that. They don't know really what they're doing. And as you guys know, like, I'm actually willing to believe conspiracies. Like, I'm willing to believe certain things exist that some skeptics probably wouldn't be willing to believe, right? But then you have Krosi's tweet, right? Who says, I'm going to tell you something that's not an opinion, it is a fact. When we don't know if this is a fact or not, if the patch changed or not. If you're EA sitting here and you didn't do anything at all, right? You did nothing at all. And you see Krosi's tweet where it's like, this is not an opinion, it is a fact. You're going to sit here and say, see, this is why we don't listen to these people. This is why we don't care about communicating, because like, it doesn't matter what we do, people will still believe their bullshit anyway. This can hurt our case here if EA didn't make a change and you have tweets like this getting 500k views. That hurts us. It hurts all of us who think that there's underlying shit going on here in this game. If DDA does actually exist, that's also at play in all of this. Like, it's just, we have to be so careful when going about this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not even saying it's impossible for there to be a a live tuning update that has happened here, right? I don't want to say it's impossible. I don't want to say that, but I think it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely something like this happened. And I think that unfortunately, because it's very unlikely in my opinion, and it's also gaining a lot of traction and getting a lot of views, EA will no doubtly see it. They have seen it. Dunans and Dragons, who works at EA, tweeted out saying, I can confirm that did not happen. Now, whatever side he was on or I was on in the argument, I would have taken this tweet with a massive, giant grain of salt, no matter what. But EA are going to see this and go, yeah, see, this is why our community doesn't really know what's going on here. And I think that sucks, because I think we genuinely do know. I think we oftentimes do know more than the people who make the game of what's going on here. They don't know inconsistent gameplay exists, guys, or not that they don't know, wow, it's bright in here. Or maybe it's not that they don't know, it's they're turning a blind eye to it, right? Or something like that. You know, that's such a more important problem here that we know exists, guys. We have 10 years of a sample size that this exists compared to one weekend league of, yeah, you went back on the patch. And now this is gaining the traction that inconsistent gameplay like never gains, which I don't understand that part. My closing thoughts here, and I want to hear you guys' comments too, of course, because I love seeing what you guys have to say about this, and it is very interesting. My closing thoughts are like, we have a game that feels different from day to day. How on earth can we make judgments on that game? It is almost impossible to. And that's kind of the point I just want to make on this. But I think that's really all I got to say here. Thank you all for watching and being here. Let me know what you guys think, of course. I love you all. Peace.